needs that come. So our topic today is Heal the Burn, investing in the mental health of burnt out faculty. And this is a presentation brought to us by the CAHIA Teaching and Learning group. So here's our agenda. We'll catch up on this stuff. We'll do a couple quick introductions, and then we'll talk about, have a little bit of a discussion that Emily's going to facilitate about identifying and dealing with burnout. And then we hope to leave a few minutes at the end for some Q&A. Let me tell you a little bit about CAHIA. CAHIA was founded back in the 1900s, 1995, in the early days of adult higher education, when adult learning was still a new model, and now we've seen a lot of that become the main and the core of what institutions are doing. The non-traditional is sort of become not just something that institutions do on the side, but a core of what they do. So Christian Adult Higher Education Association is a great organization. We've got a number of communities of learning now that are a part of that. You can learn more about it at CAHIA.org. We also want to plug the CAHIA conference that's coming up this summer, June 14 through 17. It'll be in Grapevine, Texas. There's a Facebook page and now a YouTube channel for CAHIA, so we can just make you aware of the organization and hope that you guys can connect with that. I'm Mark Fabian, so this is me on a good day. I am the lead for the CAHIA Teaching and Learning community. So we have a group of educators and instructional designers that have been collaborating on presentations like this, and the one we're going to do on Wednesday. We did some additional webinars last year. So we'd encourage you to be engaged with this teaching and learning community, because this is where we'll share ideas for research, we'll share ideas for presentations, and we can generate some discussion and collaboration around teaching and learning. Here's who is going to be part of our panel today. We've got, first of all, Dr. Emily Johns, the instructional designer at Evangel University. She is going to be facilitating the discussion, so we'll turn it over to her shortly. Our panelists are Dr. Christine Arnson. She's the coordinator of graduate counseling programs at Evangel. Christine has years of experience in clinical counseling, working with marriage and family counseling, and now she is the program coordinator. So she is one of those people that is actually working with faculty. She has brought our program through a tremendous job through a self-study for CACREP accreditation, very successful with that. And so she knows this topic. No, she's lived this topic when it comes to working with faculty. And so it'll be interesting to hear her perspective. And then we have Dr. Christopher Cottrell. He is a pastor and trained mediator with small business partner with Crucial Conversations. Chris has experience working in both the small business context, having difficult conversations and working toward resolutions. He's also worked with families in a pastoral context. So although he's not an educator, he brings a lot to the table here in terms of having those crucial conversations and working toward mental health. So I'm going to turn it over to Emily at this point to let her facilitate the conversation. And then we will hear from our panelists. Emily?
Okay, I just want to start with a couple of opening statistics that I think will help us all focus in on how serious this problem is. In October of 2020, the Chronicle on Higher Education was commissioned to conduct research to gain insights into how the pandemic had affected faculty, higher education faculty, from a mental and emotional perspective. And they wanted to see if those feelings might alter their career choices or decisions. There were 1,200 faculty members that were participating in this survey. They were all coming from 4- and 2-year institutions. Nearly half of them were tenured. The rest were on tenure track or non-tenured part-time adjunct. More than 2/3 had been in their jobs 11 years or more. 64% were women, 36% were men. And probably the overarching statistic that just takes you back on your heels is that 69% reported that they were very or extremely stressed in their work as a result of higher workloads, lower morale, and work-life balance that was almost non-existent. 50% reported that their enjoyment of teaching had seriously decreased. 35% reported that they were planning to change careers and leave higher education, and 38% that said that they were planning to move up their retirement. So you can see from those statistics that we've got a serious issue that we're dealing with, and they call it burnout. So I want to start with defining what burnout is. Chris, let's start with you. Can you give us a definition of burnout?
Chris, as in me?
Yes.
I know we're Christine and Chris. Okay.
Oh, I didn't even think about that. Okay.
Well, that's okay. I just wanted to make sure. Well, first of all, thank you for the invitation to be part of this. This is a needed topic. And just to say real quickly that the Gallup poll for health and healthcare in November came out, and the interesting statistic is that the people that have experienced the best on mental health during the pandemic are those who have been in worship regularly. They didn't say whether it's online or in person, but so those who have been worshiping have experienced the best in mental health and related to burnout. The burnout, it's that condition where you're feeling overwhelmed, emotionally drained. I guess I'll be describing it maybe more than defining it, and unable to meet your constant demands. You just hope you can survive mentally, physically, even spiritually. St. John of the Cross, who described it as, that dark night of the soul in Catholic spirituality. It's that, when you feel there's a loss of motivation, maybe lack of vision, maybe you feel isolated. I'm a visual person, so here's the best way that a couple of best ways I can describe it. One is, imagine having a birthday, which I had a few months ago, and that's when I joined the 65 crowd. And you have all the candles, and you try and blow them all out, and some of them get blown out, some of them don't. But there's a whiff, there's a blowing out, there's an extinguishing, and in burnout, that's kind of the feeling that I'm about blown out, I'm about whiffed. Another image is remember Captain Sully, Captain Sully with that plane crash of the Airbus way back when. If you don't know that story, then it shows you're younger than I am. But they ran into a flock of birds, and it took the energy right out of them. So burnout is either you hit something hits you, takes the wind out of your sails. I read one article that from some psychologists at Mayo Clinic that were just describing it as a depressive condition. What's the relationship of depression with burnout? But it's kind of a roundabout, my kind of take on burnout, but that's kind of where I'd be.
All right. So you've given us a bit of an idea there. It's a special kind of, I would say, work-related stress that we're dealing with right now, particularly as we've made the leap to this educational technology. Christine, can you give us some of the symptoms of burnout? What we might be looking at if we were trying to decide if we were burned out, what would we look for?
Yeah, so I want to just make sure that when we talk about burnout, it's usually in the context of a career or job situation. And yet, when I look at the literature, what we see is that it tends to be a catch-all phrase that, again, it's more related to, or it seems like it's used in the context of work. But what I think when I hear the word burnout is oftentimes it is a euphemism for depression. And what we see is that there seems to be, it's easier to talk about, use a term like burnout than it would be to say that I think I'm depressed. There's something a little bit more vulnerable. It seems to be much more revealing about who we are, and maybe even show some of our fear about mental illness and personal distress. And so we see the changes in even the symptoms that I'll talk about oftentimes overlap. And I don't think it's easy to tease out, because on some level, like Chris already mentioned, that there is, it seems like there are symptoms that really are associated with depression. So one of them would be lack of energy, poor sleep, decreased motivation, bottom line apathy. And that's what we call emotional exhaustion or numbness that we see. That's like in the literature about burnout, you will hear emotional exhaustion. But when you tease that out, what that really is, it's a lack of energy, poor sleep. And it could be too much sleep or not enough sleep, decreased motivation and apathy. Then there's this other symptom called depersonalization. And basically the person is grumpy, they're joyless, and oftentimes cynical. So there are a lot of negative interactions or maybe detached interactions with colleagues and people in their lives. Another thing would be, and I think this is one of those telling moments where there's a sense of, there's a loss of purpose or loss of meaning. The thing that used to give me a lot of joy and a sense of accomplishment, self-worth, all of a sudden that has diminished over time. And the idea of burnout is not that it just happens overnight, but it's a gradual losing of one's self in terms of their motivation and meaning and purpose. And so, again, those are some of the key elements of burnout, or I would say even depression. I want to just also make a note that before there's burnout, there typically is what we call brownout. And that's not used as often, but it seems like if you've ever lived in, well, in our area of the country, there's a point in the summertime where you know that if you don't water your lawn, that it's starting to brown out. And if you don't make some kind of adjustment then you'll eventually lose your lawn for the summer. It's the same thing with burnout, that there usually are symptoms prior to that that indicate that we're at a brownout stage. And then there's also compassion fatigue. And what is unique about this COVID teaching in the time of COVID is that we have all three elements working at one time. So there was the initial shock and the crisis of COVID that now has lingered and extended over periods of time, which now has led from brownout to burnout. So I don't know if that's what you wanted, but I know
that's exactly. No, I think that's helpful to everybody just to get an idea. I sometimes think that depression can lead to burnout, but burnout can also lead to depression. So it's this double-edged sword that we're dealing with. All right, so you mentioned in there compassion fatigue, and some of the reading I did on this were articles written by teachers that they were talking about their burnout, but they were also talking about the fact that they were caring for their students who were also burned out. That was the expectation of the institution, is that I care for you as my student, I'm your mentor. And there's this double load that they're carrying right now, which is very, very heavy. So anyway, okay, let's jump to the next question. And Chris, we'll kind of let you start this one off. What are some things that faculty could do to deal with burnout and possibly move forward?
I think one of the things would be several years ago, I experienced burnout as a pastor. And one of the things is to, obviously, to talk with somebody. There was, in the town that I lived in, there was a Christian psychiatrist who came to our ministerial meeting and said, hey, if you ever need to talk, just let me know and buy me lunch and we'll go meet in the park and we can just talk. And that's what I did. And that was, I reached out and asked for help. You know, if you're experiencing burnout, you need to, rather than isolating, talk to somebody and ask for help. I don't know how HR works into it in the faculty settings, but maybe talking with HR and seeing if they have any options or something that can help there. Making exercise a priority is something else I know I did when we're experiencing burnout. My wife and I did a lot of walking. This past year, I've done a lot of, I run, I'm a slow runner. you might be able to pass me walking, but but exercise is something that in the midst of it, because we spend so much time on the computer, just like we are now. So that'd be another big thing.
Absolutely. That exercise, I think we underestimate it.
Yeah.
I've gotten into that this year, and I've been amazed at the difference it has made.
Yeah.
Just in my psychological, the way I look at things, the way I deal with
Absolutely.
stress.
Yeah.
Yeah. Christine, what are some things from your perspective that faculty can do?
Yeah, so again, part of my counselor identity is to be much more proactive as opposed to reactive. And so, if there's anyone in the audience that is not necessarily there at the burnout stage, this is the time. This is the time to take more proactive measures. To Chris's point, one of those things would be for sure to engage in exercise. And it doesn't have to be a marathon. It could be just go out and walking. And while walking, there's an important element of just being what we call mindful. And for me, there are some days that I listen to scripture while I'm walking. Other days I'm just have my attention not on something that I'm thinking, but more in terms of God's creation. I hear a bird and just focus on that bird. I hear the wind, I just focus on that wind. And I think what I'm getting to at this point is just being able to have a Sabbath specifically from the teaching demands that we are engaged in. And so just making sure that we have a Sabbath to get away from the technology, which includes shutting down our computers. I have safe spaces that I do not bring my computer in my house to every room. And whenever whenever I think I have to do something, there has to be some proactive measures to care well for myself. And so that would be one. I think the other one would be just savoring. So when you're sitting and you're with your family, that you savor the moment with your family. When you're eating a good meal, that you don't rush through and gulp it down, but you savor even whatever the senses are that you're using. And so that would be one. Really with what Chris said was to ask for help. That is such a big piece of this, acknowledging and asking for help. I think there's two others that I would point out. And I loved what I think, Chris, you have crucial conversations. I did a seminar or a talk on essential conversation.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
When it comes to this topic. And one of the essential conversations would be just to ask for help. The other one would be, what kind of conversation are you having about it, within yourself? We call in counseling, we call it self-talk. Is it a friendly conversation that you're having with yourself that's encouraging, or is it something that's ongoing, critical in this taskmaster that is there's no way to live up to it? And then the other one is this conversation with the Lord. Sometimes, and it goes to the spiritual too, that sometimes our conversation is oftentimes, we think it has to be so structured, that it's just another one of our tasks, but we have an opportunity to just have this ongoing conversation with the Lord that's about gratefulness, about what is it that you have for me in this moment, Lord, that I need to learn about you and learn about me. It can be breath prayers or centering prayers that can just, again, connect us with a resource beyond ourselves, that it's more than us. And, frankly, that is, to me, that is probably the most freeing. So those are the three that I tend to capital or focus in on, even with myself or with my faculty.
I noticed my husband and I have been pastors and missionaries for many years, and what we've noticed throughout those years is that women find it very easy to ask for help for whatever reason, we don't hesitate to go to another female and say, I'm just not feeling good. I'm feeling low. I'm feeling blue. But men struggle to do that. And so it got to be a joke in our area where we would just say, one of the guys would call and say, hey, can we go to lunch? And you just knew that it was, I need help, but that was their way of asking. So just being sensitive to that fact and understanding that it's sometimes a guy won't ask for help, but they will ask to sit down and have a meal. And that's the time when you have those open doors. I'm sure, Chris, as a pastor, you get that a lot, where they just want to come and visit. So yeah. I think another thing that we have to realize is that we have to know when it's about us and when it's about them. In this environment right now that we're living in, there are things that are coming from them that we can't manage. And we have to be able to stand up to that and either say no, or I can't do it in that time frame, or whatever, and feel free to do that. But that's a hard thing to do. Our next question. We've all been around them. We have colleagues that we know are struggling. So how can we help our colleagues who are in need and they may not realize it? They may be stumbling around and you can just see their work performance is off. Their joviality is gone. You can see they're dragging themselves to work every day just to be present, but they can't come out and say that they need help. How do we deal with this? Chris, why don't you start from a pastoral perspective? How would you deal with someone like that?
Yeah, I think as I thought about that question, that's where my Crucial Conversations background would come in, to try and have a conversation with them. First of all, just in Crucial Conversations, I'll try and make it brief, that we start with heart. So get the log out of my own eye. It sounds very, very biblical. Start with me first, just so I know how I'm going, my motivation. Then I ask to talk with the person, and then I would, just kind of share with them facts. Here's what I'm seeing, and I'm wondering if, can you help me? No, I'm just talking and giving them room to talk back to me, and they might say, thanks for asking, or I didn't see that, or if they feel unsafe, just give them room for responding and saying, oh, no, don't misunderstand me. I'm not saying you're not doing your work. I'm just saying, I'm seeing that you look tired, you look sick, do you look like something's going on? Do you need help? And I want to help you get help. So having I think someone who's going through burnout is, especially if it's the deeper it is waiting for somebody to ask them. It can almost be, I can't do it, I'm stuck. And I'm just, then my wife basically made me go talk with this Christian psychiatrist. I was just stuck. It's like I couldn't emotionally move. But if we can have that essential or crucial conversation with them to talk about it, that can be a step towards helping them get help that they need and exploring that with them. And yeah.
Right. Thank you. Christine, what if you had a faculty member that you saw something was just not right? How would you deal with that?
Yeah, so a couple of things. I just think in the time of COVID, actually gives us a little bit more of an open door, because we can normalize it. I don't know if it would be as threatening given the context of today's world. And so on some level, I'm hoping that as a leader that I'm checking in with my faculty on a regular basis. But even if that wasn't on a regular schedule, I think it's reasonable to say, hey, and first model. I think modeling vulnerability, modeling my willingness to acknowledge what's going on inside of me is somewhat of an invitation. We see this in human relationships a lot, that I'll tell you a little, and then in some ways, this human connection or interaction that we have oftentimes elicits another disclosure. That's what happens on first dates, I think it happens in small groups and things like that. But I just think that this is a way in which we can do this as leaders and say, I just know going hybrid or teaching online or navigating how many things that we have to do to accommodate or make sure our students are all right, it has taken a toll on me, and I've noticed it in myself, and I'm just checking in with you. How are you doing? Yeah, and I just think that's a nice way in to normalize the experience. So that would be one. I think it's so important to be a safe leader too, a safe colleague. And one of the ways that we can do that is to make sure that we're pointing out strengths. Here comes that counselor part of me again, pointing out the strengths and the gratitude that, and giving voice to it about who that faculty member is. And, I know this has been really hard, but one thing I know that you've done this, or I've seen you do this, and boy, just to, turn around and make sure that you expand the perspective, that it's just not me checking in on you because it's kind of my thing to do, but it's because I care about you and I care enough to see the good things too, whether you see them or not. So I think that's another one. And then the last one would be something that happened for me this week. Actually, last week I posted on Facebook, and it's small, kind gestures. I can't get over what a small, kind gesture like a plant or calling ahead and saying, hey, I'm going to go buy a Sonic. I want to know, do you want me to pick you up one too? It's
Yes.
It's it's the happy hour, half price drinks.
Yeah.
Well, I'm going to bring one to you. I'm running by Starbucks. Just little things. Someone left me a Hershey's Kiss on my desk. Those little things can make a huge difference and can lead into the conversation where they feel safe with you.
Exactly. I had a colleague recently that gave me a book as a Christmas gift. It's called 52 Lists for Happiness. And it's just basically walking you through, different aspects of your life and what makes you happy and what doesn't. And so the first list was, what makes you happy right now? And I froze. It was like, I haven't had time to think about that. I'm not sure. And it took me a couple of weeks to add to that list, and to understand what I was feeling. So, there's just little things, writing it down, the little gifts, like you said, that helps so much.
Emily,
Go ahead.
Can I just say one other thing?
Yes.
So I just think validating can be huge too. And I want to give a personal example. Over Christmas, most our semester ended early, but our grad program had to go a little bit longer. And I was working on like 4 different projects at that time. And I was actually on the phone with Mark Fabian. I don't know if you remember this conversation, Mark, and I can get tearful as I think about it. But we were working on this project and I just said, Mark, I am so tired. And I could probably meet the week of Christmas, but I just really need a break. And I was just voicing it. And he came back and said, Chris, you do need a break. Someone validating that. He didn't say, no, you need to take a break. You have to take a break, or you're going to burn out. He didn't say any of that. He said, yes, you need a break. And just hearing somebody else validate what I was experiencing the moment, 5 words? It was, I don't know why I couldn't give myself permission in that moment to do it until he said it, but he said it. And I think God uses those really like unscripted moments to validate what we need and hopefully help us get what we need.
Exactly.
Thank you, Mark.
All right. We're running short on time, but let's just touch on this quickly. As Christian educators, how can we develop and maintain resilience despite the reality of the ongoing challenges in Christian higher education right now. Chris, why don't you give me like one or two things that would help us maintain resilience, something we could do?
Okay.
And because I want to get to this last question on calling, so I don't want to go too long on this.
Okay. I'll just, we've already mentioned one thing that I would, as I thought about this, and that's taking care of your body, taking care of yourself.
Yes.
And a second thing is what Stephen Covey calls, in the 8th habit, calls finding your one voice and helping others find their one voice. So it's staying focused on your one voice and not getting confused with all these other things.
Oh, that's really good.
So keep on that.
Thank you for that. That's a good one. Christine, anything to add to that?
Yeah, just one thing. The APA talked about resilience. That's the American Psychological Association. And they found that the primary factor in the ability to adapt, and that's really what resilience is the ability to adapt in the face of adversity, is to surround oneself with caring and supportive relationships inside and outside of our family. And so that's so interesting that the whole spiritual component and worship is so much a part of that. And so again, how are we surrounding ourselves with supportive and caring relationships? And how are we providing that for other people? I just think that could be really key.
Very, very good. Very good. All right. Our last question. This has been so good. Christian educators understand calling. We use that word a lot. A strong sense of calling can either fortify resilience or fuel burnout. As we know, we cannot sustain our calling and neglect our mental health. So how can we harness our calling as Christian educators to experience healing and maintain mental health? Christine, you want to start on that one? How can we harness our calling as Christian educators to experience healing in the midst of all that's going on? Any ideas?
I think so much of it has already been talked about and alluded to, but I just want to say that I read a book actually it was in February of last year called, and it's by Alan Fadling, I think that's his name, it's The Unhurried Life. And who knew that this was going to be the text that I would refer back to? And that is, he makes a distinction between working for God and working with God. And being able to recognize that I am a workman with the Lord, and that there's a different feel to that when I have it's like an opportunity. It's a privilege to work with our Lord versus working for. There's something about the working for that that's loaded with deadlines and performance and perfection. Honestly, I gotta tell you, perfection, all those things. And when I work with the Lord, I can pause and say, okay, Lord, what is it that you're trying to teach me through this scenario about myself, about you, and about the people that you care about and love? That for me, it was a perspective adjustment. And I just, among the other things that we talked about, reaching out, maybe making an appointment with a mental health provider, making sure that you go to your primary care physician, those types of things, yes, those are important. But when it comes to our calling, that we have a perspective check and that we have an opportunity to work with him as opposed to work for in a way that seems to be just another task.
Chris, I'm going to give you the last word on this.
Okay.
Share with us.
3 words. Well, I've got a couple of quick scripture references. I won't preach anything, but the 3 words: doctor, diet, and differentiation.
Okay.
People need to go to their doctor, they need a diet, and they need to be able to differentiate. Just think of sometimes the calling, pastor, teacher, missionary, can be the tip of the iceberg. what we're doing, just as Christine was getting at, the working for the Lord, the working with it. It's like Elijah. Here's all the things that I've done, Lord, and here's what's going on. But until he heard the still small voice of the Lord, then he began to work with the Lord again. You know, the psalmist, be still and know that I am God. And Job saying, you know, I had heard of you, but now my eyes see you. And for that calling, Christian educators, pastors, missionaries, the calling has to go below that tip of the iceberg, down deep into not just hearing about him or working for him, but seeing him in the depths to be able to maintain that resiliency.
Yes, very good. Working alongside him. I found in my own calling, not only was I working alongside, but I was actually working with people to bring them along. And if that part of the calling can be dangerous sometimes, that helper gene that gets overactive can cause a problem. So anyway, thank you both for sharing so much. This was great. I'm wondering if anybody has any questions or anything they'd like to add to this. Just Lisa Tyson says, great book.
That was The Unhurried Life.
The Unhurried Life, yes. Anybody else?
Yeah, anybody who wants to share, feel free to just unmute and share a comment or question.
Yeah, I would love to know, are any of your schools integrating any of your counseling, whether it's your regular student counseling or people from your counseling program, to provide any supports to your faculty, or has that all been focused mostly on your students at this point?
I think at Evangel, our counseling services has been focused on our students, but I know through our HR department, there have been a number of notifications that they've provided for us for basically like helplines that faculty and staff can reach out to and have somebody to talk to. So they have made some of those services available for us.
Anybody else? Frank?
At Indiana Wesleyan, there's a quarterly kind of dispositional take the temperature survey that our good CEO, Dr. Lucas, uses, and it did reveal that there were some struggles among faculty to try to maintain that positive disposition. I think everybody, we try to run to the support of the student, minister to the student, take care of the student. And just like pastors in the ministry, Chris, we drain the tank and then there's nothing left to care for ourselves, you know, and so we find ourselves without that network of support, then we drown. So our Dr. Lucas, our good CEO, saw this disposition emerging in reports through the pandemic among our faculty. And just literally in the last couple of weeks, the school has found a way in the midst of all the financial challenges associated with the pandemic to make some counseling services available to faculty members. And I appreciate the way he took the lead to say, I'm going to use these counseling services because I need them. I need my batteries recharged. I need someone with perspective. I need someone to encourage me in the moment to be strong and to find strength in God and to trust the Lord to deliver us through this time together. So he took the lead in sort of saying, hey, I don't have it all together. I'm feeling a little under it. I'm feeling a little pressed in by it, and I'm going to get some help, you know. So that kind of tone from the top really helped, I think, a lot of the teaching faculty, you know, sort of drop their guard and begin to access these services in a way that hopefully will yield some as we talked about so well, those resilience things. And so I'm very grateful for the fact that our administration found a way in the midst of all the budget cuts and downsizing to try to carve those resources out for faculty. That was helpful.
Bottom line is, it doesn't cost money to ask somebody how they're doing. You know, it's an easy thing to do, to show care and compassion. Anybody else? I just want to say thank you to Christine and Chris. You did a great job today. One of the ladies that had to leave early just said, fabulous webinar. She said she really needed this. So thank you so much for taking time and confronting those demons in the system, you know, the ones that wanted to keep you off the internet. Yeah.
Yeah, that's right.
I know how that feels. And I hope we get to do something like this again. This is a really good one that
Yeah,
I think a lot of us benefit from.
I agree,
And
and I hope that all those who have attended, like this is a good conversation starter. I hope that you will have conversations with your colleagues, and if you work with faculty or if you are a faculty, this is a great opportunity to reach out to some of your colleagues or maybe department chair or something like that, program coordinator. Have a discussion about the state, the emotion, the mental health and emotional state of your faculty, and find a way to be able to address some of the real issues that are there before they get to a point where it really starts to cost you. And it will, cost you with your health, it'll cost you with your student experience and everything else. So we need to take care of ourselves, and we need each other. We need to take care of each other.
Well, I think that's a wrap.
So I want to plug we have another teaching and learning webinar coming up tomorrow afternoon, 3 p.m. Eastern, 2 p.m. Central. We're going to be talking on the synchronicity, how to use live web meetings as part of asynchronous course design. And we have a couple colleagues from Indiana Wesleyan who are going to be leading that presentation. They got some resources to share. So if you are interested in that topic, you can still register for that and be a part of our session tomorrow afternoon. Thanks again to our panelists and all those who have been here. That'll be the end of our webinar. You guys have a great afternoon.